It's 7:30 p.m. across India, live from New Delhi. You're watching DDI India Global. We'll get you top stories from India and the region. I am Tanvi Taneja. And for news from the rest of the world, I'm joined by my colleague in Washington, D.C., Nick Harper. Nick, good evening from New Delhi.
Hi, good morning, Tanvi. It's 10 a.m. here in Washington, D.C. It's 3 in the afternoon across Central Europe. Coming up in the next 30 minutes, dueling court hearings for Donald Trump. We'll be live with our correspondents in New York and at the US Supreme Court to get the latest on the former president's legal troubles. And the EU tries to strengthen support for Ukraine after the US approves new funding for Kiev. But first, the headlines.
United States and 17 other countries call for an end to the Gaza crisis and immediate release of all hostages held in Hamas's captivity for over 200 days now. Donald Trump faces double court hearings today as he returns to his hush money trial underway in New York. Also faces the US Supreme Court in a bid for impunity from prosecution. French President Emmanuel Macron says Europe must not become a vassal of the United States, appeals for stronger, more integrated European defenses. And India to hold phase 2 of its parliamentary election on Friday, 88 seats up for grabs. The United States of America and 17 other countries have urged Hamas to release hostages held in Hamas's captivity for over 200 days now and end the Gaza crisis. As per the joint statement, the deal is on the table to release hostages that would bring immediate and prolonged ceasefire to Gaza. It also said that the fate of the hostages and the civilian population in Gaza who are protected under international law is of global concern. The deal has been signed by countries that include Argentina, Austria, Brazil, Canada, France, Spain and the United Kingdom. On to China now. Trade issues took the center stage as the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken met local Communist Party secretary and business leaders in Shanghai on Thursday. Antony Blinken is in Beijing now ahead of talks with top Chinese officials, including Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi. He is also expected to call on President Xi Jinping, where tough talk on issues such as Taiwan and China's support for Russia as it battles Ukraine are on the table. While reaffirming the United States' commitment to a stable relationship with China, Blinken also urged for fair treatment of American companies in the country.
We have an obligation for our people and indeed an obligation for the world to manage the relationship between our two countries responsibly. The direction from President Biden and President Xi was to continue to build those lines of communication, to sustain them, and again, to deal directly with our differences as we also seek to build cooperation.
Reacting to Blinken's remark, China has called on the US to respect free market principles.
We hope that the US side will respect the principle of fair competition, abide by the WTO rules, and work with China to create favorable conditions for the sound and steady development of China-US economic and trade relations.
And for more on the story, DD India's Laura Westbrook has sent us this report from Hong Kong.
We saw some goodwill gestures on both sides in Shanghai, with US Secretary of State Antony Blinken attending a basketball game. He also went to a steamed bun restaurant, and he met the Shanghai Party secretary as well as business leaders and Chinese and American students. But really, as he goes to Beijing, that is where we are going to see some tough talk. And it does come as there is some tension on both sides as the US Congress passed this aid package, which included arms support for Taiwan, as well as a possible divestment or ban of the very popular app in America, TikTok, which parent company ByteDance is a Chinese company. Mr. Blinken is set to meet his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi, as well as a likely meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping. Top of his agenda really will be to get China on side in stopping Chinese companies funding Russia's war effort in Ukraine. He will also be trying to get China to help de-escalate the growing conflict in the Middle East. For its part, China has reacted angrily at that aid package, which gives support to Taiwan, calling it that it was helping pro-independent separatist forces. And China has also said that it does want to strengthen dialogue, but it has also laid out its position and its red lines on key issues, including the South China Sea and Taiwan, which it claims as its own. Laura Westbrook in Hong Kong, reporting for DD India.
On to Washington now. Former US President Donald Trump faces a critical legal day today. He faces the historic hush money trial underway in New York City and the second case before the Supreme Court in Washington, D.C. regarding his impunity from persecution. My colleague Nick Harper is in Washington, D.C. He connects with our correspondents spread across the US and gives us more on this and other stories making headlines around the world. Nick, a crucial double court date for Trump today?
That's right, Amvi. It's going to be a busy and consequential day for the former president. Donald Trump's criminal hush money trial is currently underway in New York. Court proceedings got underway a short while ago. Donald Trump was seen interacting with locals in the city ahead of today's proceedings. It comes as Donald Trump's team grapples with how to continue campaigning as the former president remains largely confined to a New York City courtroom where he's standing trial. And of course, all of that while the Supreme Court is deliberating on whether former President Donald Trump is immune from prosecution for criminal election interference charges. The US top court is hearing arguments that could have a major impact on the next presidential election. Lower courts have already rejected Trump's assertion of immunity from prosecution, but he appealed to the Supreme Court in a bid to prevent the trial from proceeding here in Washington, D.C. later this year. Donald Trump is accused of trying to overturn the outcome of the 2020 election. Well, to get more on all of this and to unpack the details, we've got DD India's Sally Patterson joining us live from New York City and DD India's Caroline Malone standing by in Washington, D.C. Well, Sally, let's go to you first of all. Court proceedings underway. What's the latest in today's hush money trial?
Well, Donald Trump is sat in court just behind me, but he'd really rather be in Washington, D.C., but the judge here in this case said no, this is a criminal trial, so he needs to be sat in court watching as evidence unfolds in this historic case. On Thursday, we're expecting to hear more of that evidence from David Pecker. We heard the beginning of his testimony on Tuesday and earlier this week. On Wednesday, the court didn't hear this particular case, but it's back in session. And what we've heard basically from David Pecker, who was the publisher of the National Enquirer, a newspaper here in the US, is he took a very pivotal role in the coverage of Donald Trump in the lead up to the 2016 presidential election. He spoke about different approaches that he took in that role. He said he was going to post positive stories about Donald Trump, post negative stories about his rivals, and be his eyes and ears on the ground. Now, what that really looked like is this so-called catch and kill approach to negative stories about the former president. finding those stories when they came out, offering to pay people for those stories, and then effectively killing them, ensuring that they weren't published for the public to see. Now, he's already outlined the situation with two stories that came out in the lead up to that 2016 election. Those were from a doorman who alleged that Donald Trump had an illegitimate child during that time, something the former president denies. There were also allegations of an affair by Karen McDougal, which again the former president denies. What he hasn't yet spoken about is the allegations from Stormy Daniels. She's an adult film star who also alleged to have had an affair with Donald Trump in the lead up to the 2016 election, something again the president says did not happen. So we're expecting some of that testimony to start to come out today. That's at the very center of this case, where Donald Trump has pleaded not guilty to 34 different criminal counts around falsifying business records. He's accused of paying back money to his former fixer, Michael Cohen, who had in turn paid Stormy Daniels to keep quiet about her allegations. Donald Trump says that he's completely innocent in this case. He's called it a political witch hunt, and he says that this is all a ploy to try and keep him out of the White House at the end of this year.
Thank you, Sally. Let's move on now to Caroline Malone, who's joining us from the Supreme Court here in Washington, D.C. Caroline, what are we expecting today from the court? And, of course, what are the implications of this very important hearing?
It's fake news.
Absolutely. Well, the 9 top court justices have just started hearing the arguments that are about this Trump immunity case. Now, ultimately, what they're likely to be hearing from Trump's lawyers is that they think he should be deemed immune from any kind of prosecution, immune from having any kind of criminal trial against him. Now, in lower courts, what they've argued is that he was acting in official capacity. He was basically, president at the time of the January 6th attacks, the Capitol attacks, and therefore he should not be prosecuted, that he is not eligible to be tried in this case. Now, there is some precedence for presidents to get immunity in civil cases, although of course this has actually gone all the way up to a criminal case. And so this is highly unusual for the Supreme Court to be stepping in and considering this kind of case as well. Once they've heard the arguments today, they'll take some time to consider. They may not issue an opinion till the end of June or even early July, which is before their summer recess. So even if they decide that the case can go ahead against Trump, that case may not start until mid to late summer. And by that time, of course, we're in the end of campaigning before the November election. November 5th, we'll have a presidential election here in the United States, most likely against Trump and Biden, the rematch of the last election. And so this
down at the Supreme Court today. Caroline, thank you for your report, and also Sally Patterson, thank you, joining us live from New York City to give us the latest on Donald Trump's legal troubles that are unfolding today. Well, next today, during a trade union event, US President Joe Biden took a jab at the former president and Republican frontrunner Donald Trump, in particular about his hair, when recounting Trump's previous remark on whether injecting bleach might treat people for the COVID virus.
By the way, remember when he was trying to deal with COVID, he said, just inject a little bleach in your veins. He missed it, all went to his hair. Look, I shouldn't have said that. Probably shouldn't have said that. You guys are a bad influence on me.
To Europe now, where French President Emmanuel Macron on Thursday appealed for stronger, more integrated European defences and said that today's Europe could die as he outlined his vision for a more assertive European Union.
A doublé son budget de défense.
We must continue to have partnerships with other countries. Yes, meaning building a Europe that can show it is never a vassal of the United States of America, and it also knows how to speak to all the regions in the world, to emerging countries, to Africa, Latin America, and not simply through trade and agreements, but with real strategies of balanced and reciprocal partnership.
The United States has said that Ukraine has sustained its offensive on Russia with its uninterrupted support of secretly shipped missiles from the US. US National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan confirmed that a significant number of long-range missiles were recently shipped to Ukraine, and that Ukraine has now used them twice against Russia. Sullivan also went on to say that the US will send more weapons to Ukraine. Earlier on Wednesday, US President Joe Biden signed into law a law that now provides billions of dollars in aid to Ukraine, to Israel and to Taiwan.
I'm able to confirm, as you've heard from others, that in February the President directed his team to provide Ukraine with a significant number of ATACMS missiles for use inside Ukraine's sovereign territory. That shipment started moving in March as part of the PDA that the President authorized on March 12th, and those missiles have arrived in Ukraine. We will send more now that we have additional both authority and money.
In response, Russia has said that deliveries of these long-range army tactical missile systems to Kiev will not change the outcome of the conflict, but would create more problems for Ukraine itself. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said that the White House is directly involved in the Ukraine conflict as it's increasing the operating range of weapon systems that the US supplies to Kiev. The army tactical missile systems were used for the first time on April the 17th against a Russian airfield in Crimea. Well, today, the 25th of April, is World Malaria Day. Malaria is a preventable and treatable disease, but it claims hundreds of thousands of lives every year. Nigeria has more cases of malaria and malaria deaths than any other country in the world. And health experts say that a higher quality of healthcare needs to be available to all Nigerians in order to fully address the challenge. DD India's Ajak Manku reports.
Fatima Abubakar lives with her family in this small community in Abuja. She says her children often get malaria due to their poor living conditions.
I have young kids, and sometimes I'll have two of them getting malaria at the same time in a month, or one child falling ill twice a month. And that's because we have a lot of mosquitoes here. It's not easy having to deal with that.
Malaria is a disease caused by female mosquitoes found in areas with stagnant water and an unclean environment. Children under 5 are the most vulnerable to the disease. The World Health Organization says Africa is disproportionately affected by the disease.
Health authorities in Nigeria say an estimated 55 million malaria cases and nearly 90,000 malaria deaths occur in the country every year. The World Health Organization also says the risk of transmission exists across Nigeria all year round.
For years, Nigeria, through its National Elimination Program, has been working to lessen the burden of the disease through prevention and treatment, policies and guidelines. But health experts say poor funding, insecurity and the COVID-19 pandemic has slowed progress. Health experts argue that the government should look at guaranteeing access to quality health care, especially in rural areas. They say this will help in providing care for malaria cases and all other diseases the country is grappling with.
The system has to be such that there is access to care, especially for vulnerable and hard to reach places and people. People in the rural area, we must revamp our primary healthcare system, retrain our healthcare workers, so they could use the latest and recognized treatment protocols for malaria. And then we have to make healthcare access readily available for our people in the rural area.
The government says it wants to start rolling out vaccines for malaria before the end of 2024, with a target to reduce malaria prevalence by 2025. Also in April, it announced plans to improve facilities in 17,000 primary healthcare centers and establish over 8,000 new ones to improve access to quality health care. But those aims require time and significant funding. For now, Fatima is doing what she can to try and protect her children from malaria. Ajak Mangut in Abuja, reporting for DD India.
That's it from me here in Washington. Tanvi, back to you in the studio.
Thank you very much, Nick. Nick Harper joining us from Washington, D.C. Staying with Malaria Day, the Joint Secretary of India's Ministry of Health spoke to DD India, elaborating on the notable progress India has made in combating the disease.
India has made significant reduction in malaria cases. If I talk about last 10 years, the cases have declined significantly. In 2015, if we compare from 2015 to 2023, the decline is in terms of incidence almost 80% and above. And if we talk about decline in death, it is around 78%. If we talk technically with respect to API or annual parasite incidence, it has come down from 0.92% to 0.16. So there is a huge reduction in number and prevalence of malaria cases in the country.
You're watching DD India Global, still to come on the show. Harvey Weinstein's 2020 rape conviction overturned by a New York court over errors cited in the way the trial had been conducted. And uncertainty in Spain after Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez says he will suspend public duties until next week.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
605.
बदलो बदलो आदत बदलो। बदलो बदलो आदत बदलो। अब नजदीकी बैंक जाकर फटे पुराने नोट्स बदलिए। अगर बैंक मना करे तो आरबीआई के ओम्बुड्समैन से शिकायत करें। आरबीआई कहता है जानकार बनिए, सतर्क रहिए।
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Global. I am Tanvi Taneja. On Thursday, the Ministry of External Affairs of India held its weekly press conference. During the conference, the official spokesperson of the ministry addressed the protests occurring at Columbia University and various universities across the United States. The spokesperson emphasized the importance of maintaining a delicate equilibrium between freedom of expression, a sense of responsibility, and the preservation of public safety and order in every democratic society.
We've seen reports or several reports on it and have been following related events. In every democracy, there has to be the right balance between freedom of expression, sense of responsibility and public safety and order. Democracies in particular should display this understanding in regard to other fellow democracies. After all, we are all judged by what we do at home and not what we say abroad. And as far as your question regarding Indian students is concerned, we are always in touch with Indian students, and as and when there are issues which have to be resolved, we'll look into it.
And next we get you the latest on phase 2 of elections in India that unfold tomorrow. Preparations are in full swing for the second phase of India's parliamentary elections, for which voting will take place on Friday. The election will be held on 88 seats in 13 states and union territories, including the remaining part of the outer Manipur constituency. Polling for the Betul constituency in India's central state of Madhya Pradesh, which was scheduled to be held in the second phase of election, will now be held in the third phase because of the demise of the BSP candidate. A total of 1,198 candidates from 13 states and union territories, along with 4 candidates from the outer Manipur constituency, will be in the fray for the second phase of elections. Campaigning for the second phase ended on Wednesday, but it continues for the third phase of election. The third phase of elections will be held on 7th of May. The BJP is set to raise their electoral pitch with senior BJP leader and Prime Minister Narendra Modi's 32 rallies and roadshows across 10 states in the next 10 days. Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed a rally at Morena, which is a BJP bastion in Madhya Pradesh. Modi said that Morena has always supported those for whom it is country first. Prime Minister addressed another rally in Uttar Pradesh's Agra and will hold 2 more rallies on Thursday. Congress leader Jairam Ramesh also held a press conference in New Delhi and said that there is no mention of inheritance tax in the party's manifesto and that it is not the Congress's agenda. Political parties are gearing up for the third phase of election. BJP leader Amit Shah held a meeting at Medak in southern state of Telangana. He was to hold a meeting at Bolangir in the coastal state of Odisha. Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister Y.S. Jagan Mohan Reddy filed his nomination from the Pulivendula Assembly constituency in Andhra Pradesh. Samajwadi Party leader Akhilesh Yadav filed his nomination from Uttar Pradesh's Kannauj today. The Aam Aadmi Party launched a new campaign in New Delhi, which focuses on Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal's arrest in an excise policy case. Thursday is the last day for filing of nominations for the fourth phase of India's election. Till Wednesday, 19 candidates had submitted 21 nominations. So far, 83 nominations had been filed by 58 candidates. Nomination papers will be scrutinized on Friday. The nominations can be withdrawn till 29th of April. Voting for the fourth phase will take place on 13th of May. The votes will be counted on June the 4th. And next we take a look at other stories making news around the world. New York's highest court on Thursday overturned the 2020 sex crimes conviction of former Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein in the case that triggered the Me Too movement. On Thursday, Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson announced Sweden's commitment to deploy troops to Latvia as part of NATO's presence in the Baltic countries which border Russia and its ally Belarus. The Nordic country joined NATO last month, becoming the military alliance's 32nd member. On Wednesday, Spanish police, in collaboration with Mossos and Europol, announced the dismantling of Spain's largest counterfeit 2-euro coin workshop, also the largest in Europe. In Madrid, police displayed to reporters nearly 400,000 seized coins from the criminal organization. They also revealed that 10 Chinese individuals have been arrested since the inception of the investigation. And as we end, here's a glimpse of one of the most melodic album of British electro-pop duo Pet Shop Boys. Courtesy Warner Music UK, the album nonetheless features songs about freedom, solitude and looking for a new bohemia.
Took all the cake KGB boys by surprise. Paris, New York, Copenhagen, Vienna, San Francisco.
That's all for this edition of DD India Global. Do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter and Instagram. You can also find all the news on the go on our DD India mobile app. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Tanvi Taneja from all of us here in New Delhi. Thank you for watching. Namaskar.